You are Israel. Before this story, we learned of Jacob fleeing the service of Laban. He packed his family and traveled back to Canaan. However, Laban would not let Jacob go. Jacob and Laban bore their souls before one another, sharing the anger that rested in both their hearts. Eventually, the two made peace, and Laban sent Jacob on his way. Now we will learn about Jacob entering into his homeland once again, although he feared the wrath of his brother Esau. Wrestling with God, Jacob will cling to the blessings of God and get his name changed, inspired by the book of Genesis. A familiar breeze blew through the valley below Jacob. The sweet summer air caressed the plains, causing the grass to dance. Jacob smiled and turned his face towards the sun. He was home again. Still a few miles away from Canaan, he then turned towards the hill he had set camp on. Angels of the Lord had met him there. Already, Jacob knew that something holy and peculiar was taking place. "This is God's camp," Jacob acknowledged. The last time Jacob was there, he had run away in fear of his brother Esau. Esau had vowed to kill Jacob, so he left in hope that his brother's anger would subside. Jacob sent messengers to go before him, saying, "I have sojourned with our uncle Laban, and have been there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, servants that I wish to share with you. I say all these things to find favor in your sight." Jacob's servants had sent Esau the message and waited on the outskirts of his land to see what his response would be. Around the corner of the canyons, the messengers saw Esau coming out to meet with Jacob. Only behind him was 400 armed men. A great fear fell upon Jacob. He remembered how wild of a man Esau was, filled with power and tact. Jacob did not have the strength nor the men to defend himself. Jacob prepared for the worst. He divided his camp into two parties and sent them on opposite ends of one another. If Esau came to destroy one of the camps, the other would be spared. Jacob trembled before God. Fear was overcoming him, and he looked to heaven and said, "God of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, you have told me to return. You desired for me to be here so that you might bless me. I am not worthy of your kindness or your provision." Jacob, for perhaps the first time in his life, felt the full weight of God's love for him. "You have shown me steadfast love and faithfulness. I began with nothing to my name except a staff, and now I have 2 camps that rely on me." Tears hit Jacob's trembling hands. "Please, deliver me from the revenge of my brother. I fear him, and I fear for all the people here under my care. But you promised to bless me and to expand my offspring. I will trust you." Jacob lingered there for the night. He sent out droves of gifts of cattle, goats, and other livestock before him to gain favor with Esau. Yet there was no predicting how Esau would receive his gifts, for he pursued Jacob with 400 men behind him. That same night, Jacob arose with his wives and 11 children and sent them across the stream of Jabbok. He sent them away to be safe with everything else he had in his possession. Jacob was left alone, until a man sprang up from behind him. Struggling in the mud and gravel, Jacob wrestled with this man in the dead of night. Sweat and blood dripping from his body, Jacob fought for his life under the weight of this unknown stranger. The night drew on, and the sun was beginning to rear its head between the hills. Jacob, while endeavoring with this man, became increasingly more aware of his divine nature. His wrestling match was not an assault, but an invitation. "This is God's camp," echoed in his memory. Jacob, the once timid tent-dweller, found himself grappling on the ground with God himself. Dawn peeked through the trees. The man saw that he would not prevail against Jacob. He touched his hip socket and jammed his hip out of its joint. Jacob screamed and released his legs from around the man. Yet he clung to him with his arms, refusing to let go. "Let me go. for the day is broken," the man said. Jacob, who had spent his entire life making his own luck, was face to face with the end of himself. He had deceived his brother into selling his birthright, he had tricked his father into blessing him, and he had swindled Laban into making him richer. Yet now Jacob was faced with God himself, and had no means to trick his way into victory. Jacob's eyes closed tightly, and he flexed his arms firmly to the legs of this man and said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." A slight smile came across the man's face. "What is your name?" he asked. "Jacob," he shouted in pain. "You shall no longer be called Jacob," he said, "but Israel, for you have wrestled with God and with men, and prevailed." "Please, tell me your name," Jacob asked. Now a full smile filled his face. "Why is it that you ask my name?" he said, and he blessed him. So Jacob called that place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been spared." The sun's rays reflected off of the stream beside Jacob, and the warmth of the day began to dry the blood and sweat off his body. Limping back to his camp, Jacob felt ready for whatever would come next. With the sun behind him, Jacob gazed upon the fields below. He could see Esau and his 400 men creeping closer and closer. Still filled with an exhausted euphoria, Jacob hobbled towards his brother with his family traveling behind him. As the two drew nearer, Esau began running towards Jacob. He ran with fervor and power. The years had not taken away Esau's strength. Before Esau could catch Jacob, he fell to his knees and bowed before him. As a bear would, Esau wrapped Jacob up in his arms and embraced him. He kissed his neck and wept at the sight of his twin brother. The years had wiped his bitterness away, and all that remained was the affection of two twin brothers united after decades apart. Esau lifted his eyes past his brother towards Jacob's family. "Who are these with you?" Esau said. Jacob then introduced his family to Esau, and they embraced as kindred spirits. "Why have you sent so many gifts?" Esau asked. "To earn your forgiveness, brother. Please, take them." Esau refused them at first, but Jacob insisted. Jacob knew that he had truly wronged his brother and felt the depths of what he had done. The two of them embraced again, and Esau forgave Jacob. Esau departed that same day, and Jacob settled in a place near Shechem and built an altar to God called El Elohe Israel, meaning the God of Israel. And Jacob built a new life for him and his family, a life of flourishing and love. Though sorrow would not remain a stranger to Jacob, God's love was present.